Hello, everybody. I'm so happy to be here. And today I'm going to do something completely new. So it's a very special day because, well, this is the very first time that I'm going to do an interview on my YouTube channel. And I hope you are as excited as I am. And it's very special because it's the first time, but it's also very special because I have a really special guest. This is a very authentic, fiery, amazing, lovely woman who I can luckily call my friend. But this person has an excellent expertise. And so, what I want to do with these interviews is I want to connect Bach Flower Remedies to other disciplines, philosophies, and methods. And I really love everything moon, but I am absolutely not a moon specialist. I don't really know that much about the moon. So, I invited my dear friend and expert, Ester Segarra, to talk a little bit more about how moon cycles work on emotions, how you can work with the moon cycles, and how we can work even with Bach Flower Remedies and the moon cycles. So I want to present you my friend Ester Segarra. She's a certified astrologer, a shadow work practitioner, an energy work facilitator, a behavioral change expert. For over 15 years, she has worked with the moon and natural cycles, deepening her practice in astrology, ritual, and personal transformation. She has facilitated new moon circles for over 3 years, guiding individuals through very deep intuitive self-work, and offered natal chart readings for over 5 years, providing insights into people's unique life paths. Her journey began in Barcelona, where she was born, and later led to London to pursue a career as a visual artist and award-winning photographer. And for years, she has captured the raw essence of rock stars and creatives until a Dark Night of the Soul in 2015, which shifted her path entirely. Burnout and soul searching led her to a new way of living, one rooted in the rhythms of nature, in self discovery, and in alignment with the cosmic flow. She trained in astrology, shadow work, energy healing, Jungian psychology, and therapeutic modalities such as CBT and EFT. This journey gave birth to Cosmo Planner, which is a creative moon planner designed to help others navigate life's cycles with intention and magic. Her work is about living in flow, growing while nurturing your well-being, and honoring your own seasons of transformation. I love that. From stargazing as a child to overcoming the shadows of anxiety as a teenager, her life has been a journey of deep questioning, rebellion, and awakening. She believes in the power of creativity, the courage to embrace your uniqueness, and the magic that unfolds when you allow yourself to fully align with your soul's rhythm. She says life is magic for you to step into it. So, with no further ado, I present to you Ester Segarra. Hello, Esther. Hello, how are you?
Hello, Michelle. Hello, everyone. I'm very good. Thank you so much. Very excited to be here today and talk about back flowers and moon phases, my two favorite things.
Excellent. I'm so happy to have you here. I'm very excited. We've been waiting for this for a long time, and well, the time has aligned right now. So, maybe as an introduction, you could maybe tell us a little bit more about your journey. How did you come to live in tune with the moon cycles? What was the first moment you realized the moon was affecting your emotions, your energy, your decisions? And maybe how would you describe the moon's role right now for you in your daily or monthly planning or in your life?
Well, it's been a bit of a long journey, and first it was very subtle. Since I was a kid, I was fascinated by the stars and everything cosmic and everything magic and everything that was occult and everything that you could just not see. And that shaped a lot my work as a photographer. And then over 15 years ago, I started to follow the moon, but more from a magic perspective,
Mhm.
rather than following it for work or for life. So I was very much aware of the new moon and the full moon, and I was at first kind of combining it or looking at how my cycle, my own personal menstrual cycle,
Mm-hmm.
whether I will be bleeding on the new moon or the full moon, and it was changing, and I was just like, seeing how much it will align. And, I was just finding very fascinating to see how my cycle will work or align with the moon cycle.
Mm-hmm.
And then from that, I went into becoming aware of the importance of setting intentions around the new moon. So I
Mm-hmm.
started to do that as a, for manifestation, and just to have this anchor point once a month.
Mm-hmm.
And I was also aware of the full moon and the power of the full moon when it comes to releasing and letting go. So I was also using and doing full moon rituals
Mm-hmm.
to unblock and let go. So it was more from a spiritual or magic perspective
Mm-hmm.
rather than working with it as working.
Mm-hmm.
At the time, when it came to work, I was just following this very straight line path, where every day was kind of the same. So that was my work
Mm-hmm.
routine, even though I was, self-employed and I was working for myself, but still I had this idea that every day was the same. And then it was actually Mercury who first made me aware of cycles, basically. As I was deepening my knowledge in astrology, I realized by chance that I had been working on my website, my photographer's website,
Mm-hmm.
in tune with the Mercury cycle. And it was kind of like halfway through that, I think I got like a astrology newsletter that it said, oh, now it's time for blooming, the projects that you started at this date. And I thought, oh, I wonder what was I doing at that time? And I looked and I was like, oh, that's when I started to put the seeds to planting my seeds for creating my photography website.
Mm-hmm.
I was like, this is amazing. So I thought, let's see if I can finalize or continue the project in alignment with the Mercury cycle. And interestingly enough, the Mercury rules websites and communication and all this. So it was perfectly aligned. So I was working with someone who was helping me to put the website. I didn't tell her that we
Mm-hmm.
were working, according to the Mercury cycle. So I just continued to doing, like to following these different phases of the Mercury cycle, and it was so easy. I mean, in 3 months, I had done what I had not been able to do in 5 years, or more, or whatever, how long I had been trying to do my website. And the person who was doing this, the website, she told me that also found it incredibly easy. It's like, oh my God, this was one of the easiest works we had to do.
Mm-hmm.
So I was like, this is interesting. But of course, Mercury is like 3, 4 months,
Mm-hmm.
and I thought, but I wonder if I can do this with the moon on a monthly basis. So instead of like over 3 or 4 months,
Mm-hmm.
just do it every 4 weeks. So I thought I'm going to start to do that. So I started to actually tap into more into the other phases of the moon cycle, not
Mm-hmm.
just the new moon and the full moon,
Yeah.
but actually the waxing present, etc., the waning, blah, blah, blah. So I started to align with that, to start what starting projects, and also having the sense of a cycle that I
Mm-hmm.
start a project, the cycle comes to an end. So there is one part or one cycle of the project that also comes to an end. And then
Mm-hmm.
I start again. And that was such a discovery, because until then I had only thought of every day one after the other,
Yeah.
like it's constantly, linear, like nothing will ever end, nothing will
Yeah,
ever
you just plan things and get it done and don't
get
really
it
pay
done, and
attention.
next,
Yeah.
next, 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 next. Like, like even though my work was creative, I was not working in a creative way. You know, many times it felt like I was on some sort of like a production line, like next, 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 and it was just like, and I felt so burnout. I was so tired, and when I started working with the moon cycle, I was like, aha, now I get it. Now I get it why I've been feeling like I can never catch up. Now I get it why I've been feeling like I'm kind of some sort of like running against the wall,
Yeah.
or going against something. I was like, I feel like I'm going against something, but I don't know what it is. It's like, is it like, that I have to be more successful, that I have to do more, I have to work more? What
Mm-hmm.
is it that I am against? I'm against like some sort of impossible area. I
Yeah.
don't know. But no. what I realized that it was I was working against my natural rhythm, you know.
Yeah, and I think a lot of people recognize that you somehow you have these days that it just doesn't work, you know. It doesn't it doesn't go at all. Like, and you think why? And it just doesn't work. Yeah.
Exactly. Because once I started to really tune in to this
Mm-hmm.
changing energy of the moon, then I started to realize actually that's how I flow too. You know,
Mm-hmm.
when I allowed myself to actually connect to how I felt,
Mm-hmm.
I realized that I had been trying to override through, drinking coffee, mainly drinking coffee, like as a way to kind of keep
Yeah.
going.
That's
And
also interesting. Sorry to interrupt you. Interesting that we always think like, oh, something is wrong with me. I'm not good. I'm sick. I have to, I need coffee. I need to work, you know, like you wouldn't
exactly,
even think about the moon somehow, the influence of it.
exactly. So I started to tune in into these different flows and emotions, and but instead of seeing them as a bad thing, I realized that they were a superpower. It was not a weakness. It
Mm-hmm.
was a
Mm-hmm.
superpower because each energy had a purpose, So it was like dismissing certain energy as a bad energy, but it
Mm-hmm.
wasn't, it helped me to really tune into my intuition. So it meant that I stopped kind of making decisions that were not really working for me,
Mm-hmm.
because I was able to tune into my intuition better, because I was able to start to slow down at certain parts of the cycle, also feeling less guilty because it's
Slowing
like,
down. Yeah.
yeah, I was like, well, the moon is slowing down, so I can slow down too, you know, it was just like it kind of gave me permission to do all this, and to
Yeah.
also know that if I try to be in a different kind of energy, it's just not going to work. I mean, is it? And I started to feel like the mountain I was trying to climb,
Mm-hmm.
and how much energy that was taking off me. And
Yeah.
when I started to kind of like slow down, I started to follow a different path. It really kind of changed everything. And from there, from it yeah, it was a really it was a game changer. It was a game
Mm-hmm.
changer of how I could just tune in into this different rhythm,
Mm-hmm.
that it felt so natural.
And
It
it
was
makes so much sense because if you look at, you know, the planets have their roles, they do their, you know, they do their tour. Animals know exactly when they have to go in winter sleep, when they have to come up. You know, there's not an animal in the world who looks at the clock and say, I have to do this right now. Just we have completely ignored our clock.
absolutely, because it's so interesting, because the moon has been followed by humans
Hmm.
like thousands and thousands of years. You have cave paintings in the south of France, actually, that they show that they were tracking the moon cycle.
Hmm.
There's some animals that they have special, features just to follow the moon cycle. And one thing I realize is that we live at times where, luckily, we do not depend on the natural cycles for survival. I mean, we have heating in the winter, which I will never say no to. You know what I mean? Like, you have hot water, it's all nice and cozy and it's great. But what I realize is that we do need to tune into the natural cycles for well-being, not for survival, but for well-being.
Hmm.
Want to be well, you need to be aware that we are still nature. Our body, as I said, has a clock, has a circadian clock,
Yeah.
that just like all the beings in the planet. And just because we have the power to choose to go against it does not mean that that is for our own, for our best,
Yeah.
for our best, really.
Yeah, there's a lot of things I think that are comfortable, but not per se good for us. Okay,
Absolutely.
and when it comes to emotions or more energetic issues that we have in life, how does it work with the moon cycles? Can we work with the moon cycles using that to understand our emotions better, or are there certain emotions that we can use during moon cycles that can improve our life?
Yes, I mean, in astrology, the moon represents emotions. It's our emotional body, how we feel emotions. And so the moon, it is emotions. And one proof of that is that during the full moon, people go crazy. Hospitals are really
It's
busy,
true. You can ask my boyfriend. He's like,
right?
oh.
Yes, I mean, the hospitals are busier, the police is
Yeah.
busier. I mean, and the word lunatic, it comes from Luna, so it is like that. Our emotions fluctuate with the moon. There is no doubt about it, because our emotions is the energetic part of our body. It's not physical that you can see like an arm or leg. It's something that it's felt in the body. So it happens. It's an energy, and in a lot of different traditions, it is the element of water that represents emotions. So
Yeah.
just like the moon pulls the ocean and and the waves and everything, it also pulls our waters, and that includes our emotions. So there is a correlation when it comes to emotions and the moon, not only in the moon cycle, in a sense that when the moon pulls the water up, which is between the new moon and the full moon, when the moon is waxing, so to speak. When it comes to our motivation, and when it comes to our, even like the like the neurotransmitters and the brain, they are all geared up for openness, for starting, for being more motivated to do things, for opening to new possibilities. Our right brain is kind of more like awakened and more like capable of coming up with new ideas, new solutions, having the drive of feeling the desire to start new things. Then after the full moon is like a peak, it's like where, it's just like when the moon is full and everything is out in the open, so is our emotions. So
Would you say that it's better probably or easier to work on certain emotions at a certain time of the moon cycle?
um,
Or maybe inevitable even because there's just a thing pushing it forward?
that is the thing, because every moon cycle has a flavor depending on what sign the new moon is in. So every sign correlates to different part of our, human experience, you could say. For example, we are now on the Gemini cycle. So it is really good for communication. It is really good for learning. It is really good for socializing. It just makes it easier. Also, the moon cycle that it can connect to your mindset, what kind of mindset, could be mental health, for example. You could, if you struggle during that cycle, it could be that you have issues around mindset that you need to readdress, for example. The next moon cycle is going to be a Cancer, that's more about your own where do you feel safe, your comfort zone, your own sense of home. So yes, so where the moon is kind of brings a light to different emotions or different parts of our journey as humans. So if you pay attention to these emotions, you can see where do you need to work. And where do you need to work? It becomes very, very obvious on around the full moon. So the full moon is like what you've been trying to press down, to push down, it will like boom, it will come up really, really strong. It happens at around 2 times, either a full moon or when you are about to menstruate.
Oh boy.
That is another time.
And if they are on the same time, hoo-hoo.
Exactly. And it's interesting because I used to suffer from really bad PMS. And when I started working with the full moon and releasing emotions with the full moon, my PMS got much better. It
Okay,
was like,
that's interesting. Yeah.
yeah, because the PMS is the body saying, okay, you've been ignoring all these emotions. Now it's time to let them go. But if you do this work consciously around the full moon, which is when your emotions are more heightened, then your body is like, oh, great, I don't have to do that work anymore. So, and it becomes way, way smoother and way, way easier. But yes, the full moon is a time where everything comes to light. You feel very emotional. So any emotions that you've been repressing, it will become really, really hard to repress. So the best way to work with the full moon is to actually allow yourself to feel the emotions. And
Hmm.
if there are emotions that you do not want to connect to because they're painful, because you don't, whatever,
Yeah.
then you can do what I do is a fire release ritual, which is you write things down and you burn them, and that is a symbolic way to state your intention of letting things go and
Hmm.
say, I'm done with that, you know. Or you work with the Bach flowers, which that we will talk more about it. But just to focus on the moon and the moon cycle, it is a really great rhythm, monthly rhythm
Yeah.
to work with your emotions, so that you can find a better emotional balance, by releasing what you no longer want, but also at the new moon you can also set intentions for how you want to feel.
Hmm. Hmm.
This is also another way. Like you can just state like, well, I'd like to have more of these emotions. I would like to be more like that emotionally.
Hmm. Hmm.
And that emotional cycle normally will complete at the full moon of the same sign 6 months later.
Oh.
So I have, so I normally write down the intentions,
Hmm.
and I
Hmm.
don't do much. I just write them down as like I state, this is how I would like to feel. This is how I would like to be emotionally.
Yeah.
In a way, don't do much about it, but the work starts to happen in an unconscious way.
Yeah.
You planted the seeds
Yeah, you
and
put something in motion.
you put something in motion, and then 6 months later, at the time of the full moon, let's just say new moon in Gemini,
Hmm.
and so 6 months later, full moon in Gemini, I will pick the paper up and
Hmm.
I will read. And it'll be amazing how many things I can tick off the list. Done, 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 done.
Oh, that gives so much hope. That feels good. I like
Yes,
that.
it is amazing. And so the things that for example, I can't say done. It's like not done because it's the full moon. It becomes also very, very clear what it is that is blocking me.
Hmm.
Why
Yeah.
this did not happen. So it is an amazing process that you can continuously do,
It
because as we
sounds.
all know, when it comes to emotions, you are never really done. There's always things that happens in life that they throw you out. So I'm like, oh, now this happened, now this comes up, oh, now this, now that.
It sounds like a really nice, natural kind of guideline that you can use, especially if you're a person that is already aware, if you have some kind of awareness and you want to work on yourself, it feels like a really nice, natural tool that you can have at your disposal at any time, as long as you just try to understand it somehow.
Absolutely, absolutely. So yeah, when it comes to dealing with emotions, it works really well. And of course, when it comes to working,
Hmm.
doing any tasks, it also works well because every task requires a different kind of energy, you
Yeah.
could say. So that is also something that you can totally align.
Okay. Well, I really want to know a little bit more about you. We've worked a little bit with Bach Flower Remedies, and at some point you were working with the Bach Flower Remedies in a completely different way than I know, in a completely different way than I've, used or used on my clients or with my clients, better said. And I remember you explained it to me and then you say, "Did you ever do that?" And I was like, no, I didn't even think about it. And I found it so brilliant and so fascinating that you did that. And also your results and how you went about it, that I was like, okay, we really need to make a recording here and we really need to show this with people. So are you willing to tell us a little bit more about that?
Absolutely. Yeah, well, to me, I mean, now I just do everything by the moon. I mean, she's my muse, she's my guide, but I mean, it's like I have to, like just I'm gonna just say that why I started work this way with bud flowers. It was because, for example, if I have to do any, I don't know, any exercising, I never start after the full moon. I always start at the time, just after the
Mhm. Yeah.
because like I know that it works. It just works with my body. It works with how our body by nature works. So so of course when I started with the moon with the Bach flowers, which I must say that is something that I had heard for a few years back. I did try once. I told you, right, that I bought my first, and I mean, I had no guidance. I just went to the shop. I bought it. I read that you have to put, whatever, like I thought I could just do that by myself. Didn't do anything for me. I don't know. I just don't get this. I understand the idea. I love the idea, but it did not work until, we started talking about flowers. And I was like, well, maybe this is the, this is the thing, this is something that I can try again. Because even though I have been working a lot with the moon when it came to releasing emotions, there were certain things that they keep coming back and they keep coming back. And I started to feel maybe I need something else.
Hmm.
And what I realize now is that these were not just emotions, they were emotional addictions.
Hmm.
There were emotions that I was addicted to and I kept going back to because that's how it felt safe. So when we started talking about the Bach flowers, and I started, and I shared to you, like what my issues were and what was happening and stuff, and you so brilliantly and so spot on, recommended, like you gave me all the instructions, all the things and everything. And remember there was four Bach flowers, or well, four issues of four Bach flowers that, they were the strongest, that, it seemed like, you know, put by your guidance, and so spot on, that were the ones to start with or to go for. And when I looked at the four of them and the four issues, I thought there was one that was like the one that for me was like it was making my life really difficult, which was impatience. Like it was just like this is really, I mean, this is like becoming now a real issue, because there were so many things at the time that were out of my control. There was nothing I could do, and all I had to be was patient, and I could not be patient, and it was creating so much stress that I was like, well, obviously this is, this is my biggest issue. And then I just thought maybe definitely I'm going to start with the moon cycle because that's how it, I do everything.
Makes sense for you, yeah.
That's how I do, just everything, new book, new cycle. You know what I mean? Like I just, it's my drum bit, it's like
Yeah.
my rhythm, it's like ping. When do I start this? Oh, new cycle, When I let go of this, oh, at the end of the cycle,
Yeah.
like, oh, when I do this, and it becomes very, very easy. Anyway, so I just thought, well, of course I'm going to start with the cycle. And then because I had been working on this emotional process of letting go, I just thought I'm really fascinated to really learn what these Bach flowers do.
Hmm.
Because I haven't understood that it's a subtle work and stuff like that. I
Hmm.
thought if I put them all together, it's going to be a bit difficult to know what that's what.
Hmm.
So I just thought, how about I like a peeling like an onion, So what about if I start with, I felt just intuitively guided to start with one and then see what happens. I'll start with one and then see what happens. And then I thought, and I wonder if once I do go through one, whether it will become obvious which one I have to do next.
Hmm. Hmm.
Like if there is some sort of order, because
Yeah.
I can't quite see the order, but maybe there is an order.
Hmm. Hmm.
So I started with impatience. And of course, after 2 weeks, you have the full moon. So by the time we were approaching the full moon, I was like, wow, I'm really chill now. I was like, I seem very cool, like, yeah, that's fine. That's fine. I was like, whoa, like I'm all chill now, I'm not feeling impatient at all. And the interesting thing was like, well, it's interesting. It's going to be interesting now because now we're coming to the full moon. So like now, let's see if around the full moon, suddenly all the impatience comes up or what happens.
Mm-hmm.
So was really interesting because around the full moon, something very strongly came up.
Mm-hmm.
And it was not impatience. It was what was lying under the impatience,
Mm-hmm.
which was the lack of trust, And one of the Bach flowers was self-confidence. So what I started to realize is like, I'm impatient because I don't trust myself. I don't have a trust that things will be fine. If it has not happened now, it's just not going to happen. I know it's not going to happen. So that was
Yeah.
the pattern that was, the story that I was telling myself.
Mm-hmm.
So it became very obvious that what was causing the impatience was the lack of confidence.
Mm-hmm.
So I was like, okay, so at the full moon, I was like, okay, so I really want to get rid of the impatience because
Mm-hmm.
I really want to tackle the lack of confidence next. So I was almost like saying goodbye to the impatience. Thank you. Thank you for covering up for the
That's
lack of
nice.
confidence.
Yeah.
You.
Mm-hmm.
I appreciate that. But you caused me a lot of stress. And now that I'm so chill, I want to continue with that. So thank you. Next, we're going to tackle the lack of confidence. So sure enough, the cycle finished. So then on the day of the new moon, well, no, the day after the new moon,
Mm-hmm.
um, I started with lack of confidence, was lack of self-trust. And by then it was so obvious, it was so like how I have not seen that before. It became really, really obvious. So I started taking the same process. I started taking the flowers every morning. I'm a little pot, like I will sit, just by your guidance, it was just like, it was just, yes. And then same thing happened. I was like, I wonder what's going to come next. What is this hiding? I mean, what
You're
is this
already
thing covering
expecting some
up?
answers. Yeah, yeah.
Yes, I was like, and if you told me, right, that after 2 weeks or so, you can start to feel, right?
Mm-hmm.
So yeah, I started to feel more confident. And then around the full moon, something came up. So what it came up was fear.
Mm-hmm.
It was fear. I was terrified. I could start to feel not just being just fear, but being terrified. That kind of like I just have a fear. I just have a fear, and it became very obvious that that lack of confidence was covering for fear. You know. So again, I was like, okay, so now I don't need anymore to not trust myself. Okay, I mean, like, okay, we have to trust ourselves. I mean, I talk of myself as we're multiple, because I consider that there is a physical body, a mental body, an emotional body. Also, there is different parts of myself, you could say.
Mm-hmm.
So I talk of myself as a team.
A team. Oh, I like that. Yeah, a
Yeah,
team.
rather than it's like there's a whole team here of, like
Yeah, there is a whole team.
yeah, there is, hands and legs and all these parts, you know what I mean, that they have to work together. So anyway, so I was like, we have to now, we can trust ourselves, we have to trust ourselves, because this is who, I did a little bit of work of kind of like, why are you not trusting yourself? We've made it all the way here, it's like,
Made it all the way. Yeah.
we made it, we made it all the way here. We can do things, and the things we don't know how to do, we can learn them. And I coach myself into like, come on, we got to trust ourselves. So yeah, so I then was coming after was this fear. It's like, well, now we need to tackle this fear, because it's like this is the next thing. We have to let go of self-doubt and self-trust and lack of trust and all this. So I did a bit of a ritual, full moon ritual, and also throughout the second part of the moon cycle, where the moon is waning, which is a good time for letting go. The body is time for releasing toxins, everything. I allowed myself to cry a lot, as a way to just let the emotions flow and just let go. And not crying like, oh, poor me, but rather than, okay, maybe we need to cry to release this. So we're going to do it. And so, yeah, I came to the end of the cycle. So next up, fear. So yeah, it was basically, the same process. But that was interesting. That was very interesting what happened with fear, because what I've noticed, like a lot of fears came up, and I was, kind of dealing with them, and some fears, of course, of things maybe that have been brought up, in fears, natural fears that we have as human, all sorts. And I was kind of like, yeah, but fear in itself is not a bad thing, like, I mean, it's kind of good in some situations to have a bit of fear and stuff. But I felt there was something. And it came to me that one of the fears, which was to go into the next emotional step, which was sadness. One of my greatest fears was to find myself in such a place of sadness that I would not be able to move. I would not be able to do anything. I would be like in that place of nothingness. Or like a deep, deep sadness or deep nothingness, where I could not really bring myself to, to do anything. I will not have the courage, the energy, or anything. And I realized that, so again, after the cycle of fear, I went into the cycle of sadness. And that was the last of the four Bach flowers that I had. And that was a really tough cycle because tapping into that sadness, I was like, every time I tried to go there, I was like, my body suddenly will go like, don't we have to check Instagram? Or don't we have to go on social media? Or don't we have to do this? Completely finding ways to distract itself, like it was amazing. I was just like, oh, we don't want to go there. I was like, I don't either. But, you know, but because also we were doing the Bach flowers, it was also way easier. I noticed that actually there was some sadness that started to not feel so sad, So when we started the process, I was much more fearful. And as I started to take the Bach flowers and the Bach flowers started to do their work, it was almost like they created a pillow where it was easier to rest and it was easier to be comfortable, to just like let go, let go of a lot of the sadness was for like memories and experiences and trauma, basically trauma and all wounds, so it was a really beautiful cycle. um and by the end I felt a lot of joy. It's interesting because I read recently that they're saying that joy is the matriarch of all the emotions. It will only show up once you welcome the rest of the emotions.
Ooh, that's deep. That's nice. That's a nice reward.
Yeah. Yes. So that is basically how the whole process of working with the moon and the Bach flowers worked, and in a way that they they combine the alchemy in such. I mean, I can't really explain it because I don't know enough of Bach flowers. I mean, I can only, because I do everything by the moon, so that was no difference for me, But
I found it so brilliant. I hadn't even thought about it. And I
That
even wonder if depending on what moon it is, if you let's say have 4 or 5 Bach flowers that you need to take, depending on what moon it is, if it would be good to choose, depending on the moon. I'm sure there is so much to explore there. It makes me super enthusiastic.
absolutely, because I mean, even though, the moon is about the emotions, every sign has a different, just a slightly different, nuances about it.
Yeah.
And for example, I mean, I don't know how it will relate to Bach flowers. For example, when the moon is in Pisces, for example,
Hmm.
we aim for feeling connected, or, anything that is spiritual, or anything that is artistic, or anything that it allows us to go with the flow, trust, you
Letting
know,
go.
it's ideal for that. So of course, any Bach flowers that, for example, help with that,
Hmm.
that could be really, great.
It would have turbo effect.
Exactly. Like for example, when the moon is in Scorpio, Scorpio is a lot about fears.
Mhm.
I
Yeah.
did, like, yeah, I mean, like it I was gonna say that I worked, with the eighth house, which is the Scorpio house, whatever,
Hmm. Hmm.
whatever, with the fear. So, Scorpio, I'm getting now to astrological, it
Go
doesn't matter.
for it. Yeah, sure.
Like, that doesn't matter. But yeah, for example, the Scorpio is a lot about fear,
Hmm.
fears, also taboos, or anything that, like in the
Yeah.
unconscious. So yeah, so it is, it works really well for that.
Hmm. Hmm.
I mean, I've many times find myself that when the moon is in Scorpio, I make some time to actually cry a bit.
Hmm.
It's good to kind of just let go of things, it's like,
And the good news is I have downloaded your really awesome app. So now I can actually, if I know that I need a few Bach flowers, I can actually look at what moon is coming easily and tailor that to that. So I would really recommend that to everybody to download the app because I found it really, 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 really so handy. And I really would like to talk a little bit about that. I just wanted to ask you one more time, just to have it really clear for myself and everybody who's listening. So you worked with Bach Flower Remedies and you chose to work with a new one every new moon cycle. So on the new moon, you started to work with one, and because that somehow has the energy to start something new. And then you stopped it at the full moon, and that is actually the moment where the emotions become more.
I took it throughout the whole cycle. I took it
Okay,
throughout
okay,
the 4 weeks. Yes,
okay, 4 weeks. All right. Oh, yeah, that's true. And you told me so about 2 weeks in, then you have the full moon. And this is where you really have the kind of
very
effect of the knowledge and you're seeing what it's really doing. And then you still take it until, just to have the lasting effect a little bit more.
exactly, because between the new moon and the full moon, our
Mm-hmm.
body is more observant.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
So when I started with the back flowers, is when my body was ready to take in
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
new,
Yeah.
like, okay, what you're giving me, giving it to me, So I really felt very quickly, very, very,
Mm-hmm.
that it was working. You
Yeah.
know, it took no time at all to start to feel the effects. So, and it was at the full moon that became clear what was happening emotionally,
Yeah.
what was happening
It's
under.
perfect because it's like 2 weeks. That is a good time for the Bach flowers to be noticed somehow. And then with the, with the force of the full moon on top of that.
Exactly. And then, so then, because after the full moon to the end of the moon cycle,
Mm-hmm.
the energy is great to let things go, to
Oh,
release.
yeah, perfect.
I was still taking the back flowers as a
Mm-hmm.
support
Mm-hmm.
to reinforce the,
Yeah, the
this
process.
emotion is about, we need to clear this emotion.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Like you, I'm giving you the back flowers to support this,
Yeah.
but also I am now really, really, really determined. It was like stating my intention to really
Mm-hmm.
overcome or to really release that emotion, because it became very clear what was the purpose and
Yeah.
why, and that it was time to let it go. I thank the emotion and then I let it go. So the last back flower I will take will be the day before the full moon. The day before the new moon.
Okay.
That is like
Yeah.
just right the day before. Then I will take nothing on the day of the new moon.
Okay, yeah.
It will be like a break, you know what I
Mhm.
mean? Like a
Yeah, a really clean slate.
clean slate, nothing on the day of the new moon. And then, because also the day of the new moon, I use it to kind of be with myself, focus on new intentions. And it's like, I normally don't exercise, don't do anything on the day of the new moon, because it's like a 1 day of reset, as
Hmm.
much as I can sometimes.
Yeah,
I always put aside some time to really reset, closing one chapter, and opening a new one.
yeah.
So then, once I've set my intentions and everything, on the day after the new moon, I will start the new bottle of Bach flowers, or
Okay.
the new.
I'm definitely going to try that. I'm very curious about it, and I found it absolutely brilliant. I hadn't at all thought about it, and to me, it makes so much sense that this will have a cumulative effect. And I mean, gosh, that there's so much experimenting to do with that. And
Yeah,
so, as I said, I have downloaded your app. I found it really so. I really love it because you can kind of easily follow what moon phase we are in. When is the next one coming, and what kind of moon are we? What does that mean? What does it want to say us? So, if you kind of want to align your work or your emotional work to that, you can kind of see, okay, this is a good moon for this, and this is a good moon for this kind of emotions or for this kind of work. I love it. I'm also tracking my period with that to understand myself better. And yeah, maybe you can explain us a little bit more, like how would you use, for instance, your Moonflow app, if you want to work a little bit emotionally or plan things or work on projects? Because I was thinking, together with that question, what are the tips or the advice that you can give to someone who wants to begin implementing these moon phases but doesn't really know where to start? And I just automatically think about the app because everything is there. I don't have to look anything up. I find it so brilliantly easy.
thank you. Yeah, that was the purpose a bit of the app, to make it very, very easy. I think that you can learn a little bit about, I mean, we've talked today a bit about the different, how the moon cycle works. I do offer a free, downloadable ebook
Hmm.
where, I lay out the principles of working with the moon and the
Hmm.
phases, etc.
We'll post it here also down the video, so if people are interested, they can just look at everything there as well.
Exactly. So, and it is just to start with first being mindful, realizing that life works in cycles, nature works in cycles, you know, and that it is only us humans that we've created this idea of this machine-like way of living and working. I mean, but this linear thinking is almost is actually kind of a recent thing. It is this it's being brought up by two things, by religion and by the industrial revolution. you know but when we look at how nature and how the universe works, everything works in cycles. And cycles does not mean that everything is repeats itself. It just
Hmm.
means that there is a beginning, there is an end, and the end is what brings out the new beginning. So just like in the year, when it comes to this to the winter, the winter is just preparation for the summer, for the spring, and then the summer and everything. So this is a very basic idea. So with that, if you start tracking when is the new moon and when is the full moon, that is the easiest way to do it.
Hmm.
Just to know that the new moon is a start, the full moon is a climax, is a moment of culmination. And so first the energy goes up and then the energy goes down. So if you think of before, the first half of the moon cycle is like spring and summer.
Hmm.
The second part of the moon cycle is like autumn and winter. This is the concept, that in 4 weeks you have the 4 seasons, but they are
Hmm.
not 4 seasons that you see in nature, but
Yeah.
they are emotional seasons. So we go through those, on a regular basis. And not only with that, but every time the moon changes sign, every 2 or 3 days,
Hmm.
gives you a different flavor. And it's a bit like if you think of anything that you want to do, being emotionally or with what, if you think of it as cooking a big meal, you want to cook a big meal, whatever that is that you want to do, and you have all your ingredients, and every time the moon goes somewhere, it's like it puts the fire a bit up, or it brings you an ingredient that you really need, and it will make it much easier, much tastier. So that's the whole point of biodynamic culture, for example, like that they plant things according to the moon, because the moon brings those extra special ingredients that
Hmm.
makes it better and easier, you know. So that is, so by just being aware of that and seeing that by doing that is opening to receiving those gifts, those special ingredients, that is, and knowing that by doing that, your your meal will be way tastier, way more delicious, and way easier to make.
Hmm.
You I think this is the very basic idea. And as as you mentioned, if with an app, you can just easily check when things are going to be, so that like when you need to do something, just adjust the timing, because adjusting the timing can make
Hmm.
such a big
Yeah.
difference.
Ex
But
because I was thinking on your app, for instance, you talk about the void of moon course,
yes,
talking about timing. Like, I really pay attention to that. You can explain maybe what it is much better than I do.
so yeah, the word of course moon, it is, it's the idea that the moon runs into the void. Okay, and basically what it is that, as I said before, the moon changes sign every 2 to 3 days.
Hmm.
So if you think about, the best way to think about it is like a book, like every time the moon goes into a new sign, Gemini, Aries, Taurus, or whatever, it's like a new chapter begins, the chapter of Taurus. So, and then just before the moon, just goes through, doing her thing, connecting with all these planets. And at one point, the moon makes the last connection with the planet, you know, one
Hmm.
last connection. And then for a few minutes, a few hours, or for very long hours, the moon doesn't make any connection to any other planet until it moves to the next sign.
Hmm.
So when the moon does the last connection with the planet, it's like the last sentence of a chapter. And then when you have a chapter, then there is this empty space, right? Before
Hmm.
the new chapter starts. So the void, of course, is that empty space where nothing happens.
Hmm. Hmm. Okay.
So it's like anything that you do during that time, nothing will happen, And the energy is like not quite right. The decisions you make will not work out. You will have to readjust them. It's like things don't flow.
Yeah.
I don't know how it's
Gosh,
been to
already
explain.
just knowing that can change so much.
So much, because I mean, I've been trying to outsmart this.
Nature always wins.
Nature always wins. It has, what I mean? Now I was like, first I was like, really? So I tried to test it, and I was like,
That was funny. Really?
yeah,
Oh, yeah,
and then,
let's see about that.
and then I was like, oh well, maybe it doesn't affect so much. And oh my God, it so did. I mean, once I bought a present for someone, like, well, I'm sure it will be fine. When I gave it to them, I was like, well, obviously it was not the right present. I was just like, I was like, I knew it, and
Oh
I did
God.
not follow it. So now I can 100% stand behind that, because I have tried to smart it. I have tried to not follow it, and and to me, another way to think about it is, would would you do this if you were really, really drunk?
Oh,
So then don't do it. You know what I mean? Like, would you make like a really big business decision when you are really, really drunk?
yeah.
No, you would not, because you will regret it. You know it will be wrong. You know that you will go like, "What was I thinking?" Exactly that. You know what I mean? It is exactly that. That's another way to look at it. Less poetic, but yeah.
Yeah, but it's really, really good to know already along that. I mean, how many times you're trying to work on a project and you just have these moments and it just doesn't work, and then you start to think, especially if you don't have enough self-confidence, like what is wrong with me and I should quit, and like you can really have intense emotions for no reason whatsoever, just because that's just the rhythm of how things are going, and you just there's just a respect to have for it, but we're completely clueless about it really, so we basically have no idea. So yeah, for me, I have to say I really love the app. I use it, and it's true that I have been finding it easier to be creative. Sometimes you have moments that you're not creative, but when you're doing it at the right time, it just kind of flows. And when you're taking also the time to rest, which is also something I find very difficult to take rest. I got just one last question. Could you somehow say, because we talked about the seasons in one moon cycle, could you kind of say that the new moon would be like spring, where you kind of come up with ideas and you're planning and you're brainstorming, and then let's say around the full moon is maybe the moment, or just before, where you're putting things into action, where you're doing it. And then like right after the full moon would be the moment that you did the work, and now you're kind of seeing what happens with it. And then in winters maybe, so at the end of the cycle would be the moment that you're kind of just doing nothing, just enjoying the result, and just taking a break. Like, would you say that there is something like that, and there is a mandatory break somehow to have every month?
Something like that. On the issue of resting, one of the great things about the word, of course, it has helped me a lot to rest without feeling guilty.
Oh yeah.
When there is a few hours of, oh, I have to stop working now, because anything I do will be utterly pointless, so it has helped me so much to just do nothing. I mean, sometimes I clean the house, or I go for a walk, or
Yeah,
like,
nothing of really substance. Yeah.
and of course you can clean, I mean, like, just do something that is automatic and is nothing, like, or
Yeah.
whatever. So it has been really great time to do that, you know um or to tell something to someone, like bad news to someone, not super bad news, but bad news to someone, because they might forget. That's another thing that
Oh,
happens with,
that's a good one. Yeah.
so
So
if you have to say,
for all those Bach
yeah, someone,
types who are too kind and or who are scared of something, this is the moment.
exactly, if someone said, oh, you want to do this, and you can't do it, but you don't want them to be upset, you say it during the word of course moon, and then they're like, oh, okay, no problem, and they just forget about it.
So for all the Centauri types who are people pleasers, if you want to say no, start at that point.
The word of course moon, exactly.
Excellent. Great.
So yeah, so it's a great period of time to rest if you want. But yes, I mean, and the thing about rest, and the moon, that it shows you, is that when we think about rest, many times we think about doing nothing,
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
and
And then you're
because that's,
forcing yourself to do nothing.
yeah, to do nothing, and it's like, how do I do nothing, but if you think about the Tao, for example, philosophy of the yin and the yang, rest really is yin energy.
Mm-hmm.
And yin energy it's not about being out there. It's not about doing action that is outwards or is external, but it is something that replenishes you from the inside.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
So it could be reading a book, for example, a book that not for any purpose, but just for the pleasure of reading a book.
Mm-hmm.
That's a
Mm-hmm.
form of rest. It could be going for a walk or going for a swim, not swimming for a competition. That will be, doing something for external purpose,
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
swimming for just the pleasure of being in the water. It could be dancing, but just for anything that is not for the purpose, but it is just purely for the connection, for the joy of it, because
Mm-hmm.
that it,
Yeah.
it replenishes your energy. And also doing things like that, it connects you with your intuition. So it's really good at the end of the moon cycle to do things like that, because it's at the right time to connect with your intuition. And why would you connect with intuition at the end of the moon cycle? Because that's how you prepare for the next moon cycle. When you connect to your intuition, you tune into what is really important to do, what is really that you want to do, what feels aligned, what
Hmm.
feels, in tune with yourself.
Hmm.
You can't you can't tap into this wisdom when you're rushing around. You can't, if you're always busy and rushing around, everything feels
Right.
important. Everything is like has to be done, has to be done, has to be done. But when you allow yourself, just to allow the last few days to just be a bit more quiet, doesn't mean that you have to, right, I'm gonna not do anything for 3 days. I mean,
Hmm.
that might not be realistic, but
Yeah.
everything that you do is not connected to the intuition. And the other thing is the different kind of tasks, because the first 2 weeks of the moon cycle, as I said, more the spring and the summer, is when your creativity and you more the idea of new possibilities, it is highest. So it's very expansive and it's about kind of doing, but doing in a sense of like, what are the possibilities? What are my vision?
Yeah.
After the full moon, the energy starts to become a bit more focused. So then the kind of tasks that are better to do is not so much creative and new possibilities, but it is about finishing what you started.
Hmm. Yeah.
Like focus. I mean, maybe, if you're doing a big project, there is always like the big things putting together, and then there is finalizing the details or organizing it or putting it into the final shape. So
Hmm. Hmm.
that is way easier to do after the full moon,
Yeah.
as we're approaching towards the end of the moon cycle, because it doesn't require so much creative energy. It
Mhm.
requires more like focus. It
Yeah.
requires more like, also it's easier to say, yeah, well, why did I do 4 videos? Only 3 are good. This is not so good. You know what I mean? Of
Yeah.
things, like maybe check things that are not so good, that they don't work
Hmm.
for us.
Hmm.
Or maybe it was not needed to do 3 hours, maybe 2 hours was enough. You know what I mean? Like
Yeah.
start to condense,
Discernment and yeah.
to remove what is not essential, because it's easier to remove things. I have always been really terrible at letting things go, and I started to actually, um, when I had to clear up stuff, at my place, and I started to do that at the end of the moon cycle, and it was so much easier.
Oh, that's a good idea. It's for
Yeah,
those moments when you're like, I'm gonna clean up, I'm gonna throw away some of my clothes, and then you're ending and putting everything back, and you're like,
exactly,
and you know that you will never wear these items, but you can't let them go.
exactly. Because what happens is, as the moon goes smaller in the sky, our emotional attachments decrease as well. So we can
Hmm.
become a bit more distant, a bit
Yeah.
more cold emotionally, you could say. And that is good, because it allows you to
Yeah.
to not feel so attached to things, and to just let things go in much, much easier. And now it's like, well, what do I need to get rid of,
That's excellent. That's such good advice. I love that it's so, it's very applicable in everyday life. It's very practical, but it's also it has something very spiritual. Like you can really apply it to the basic tasks of everyday life, but also the really traumatic experiences that you want to work around with, that you want to do something with. So it's absolutely fantastic. I don't know if you have anything else that you want to share with us, or if there's maybe some things that you want to share about where we can find you, if we want to contact you or follow you, if there's any place or anything else you would like to share with us.
Well, first of all, thank you so much for introducing me to the Bach Flowers magic, because it's absolutely magic. It has really helped to heal my heart. It really has. And I just brought in the rhythm of the moon, because that's how I do that. But I really wanted to express this gratitude, really, for such a beautiful alchemical way of healing emotions. I think it complements so well the work that you can do with the moon,
Hmm.
because ultimately everything that you do is connected to emotions. You know, like the motivation that you feel to do something, or the lack of motivation, or the inspiration for this. Everything we do is runs through our emotions.
Hmm.
So for a long time. And if any of you watching this has ever felt like their emotions get in the way, um, I just want to say that they don't. That if you work on managing them, if you work on working with them and aligning with them, they are superpowers. They really help you to feel alive, because the other option is to completely disconnect from your body.
Yeah.
Oh, like that is the other route which I taken for a long time, and it just led me to burnout and feeling dead and disconnected. So by working with my emotions, I feel alive, but not alive in a bad way, like, oh, I just, but by managing them with tools like Bach Flowers, and also with, being guided by the moon, it really has helped me to see them as superpowers, and how can I use them for, realize that there's so many things I can use them for, and that they bring that extra ingredient, that extra spice, and it's absolutely beautiful and magic. So if anyone, ever feels like, that they need to work on that and they want to heal their heart, I would really, really recommend either with the moon, well, both, to really combine both, because I think it's such a magical and rewarding journey. And if you are new to the moon, yes, please, get in touch. I'd love to hear from you. We will leave the details, I guess, in the description
Mhm.
um, below.
Yeah.
There's the Cosmo Planner website. There is the app. They also have a planner for those who like to write things. I love paper and stuff. Um, so that it also helps you to plan things and to start working, from your inner compass, instead of, to the mercy of the outside,
Yeah.
the external demands, basically, So what you will do is you will strengthen your own inner compass, your own inner voice. And by doing that, you will feel more fulfilled, basically. I mean, you mentioned me being a people pleaser. I've been there, I care about people, I care about all of you watching this, it's like, tell me what, like,
Stop
do
loving.
do it, it's like, I know the pain, I know it, I so know it, and I never thought that, I really never thought that this would be possible, like, to really tune into the emotions, to really live through the emotions, feeling alive, but managing them and seeing them as superpowers, and feeling, being productive, but not in a linear kind of way, but in a very human, human in the most positive sense of the word. Not oh, human. No, no, no. Human, with our humanity, so organic, so in tune with nature and the cosmos, and to feel that beautiful sense of connection and everything, So I really encourage you that you find, if you're going to come to me, great. If you find other ways that suits you better, just I wish you all the best. But yeah, you can come to Cosmo Planner and you will feel at home.
Thank you so, so much, Esther. That were such beautiful words to end. In there, indeed, heal your heart in alignment with the moon and with Bach Flower Remedies. I think that is such a lovely note to end with. I want to thank you so much for everything, for your wisdom. And well, I will definitely align myself more and more with the moon thanks to you. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Bye, everybody.
Bye.